Welcome to the Attract Your Ideal Clients podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs who sell their expertise, including trainers, consultants, and coaches looking for real-world, actionable marketing advice to help them identify their competitive strengths, find and fix the marketing bottlenecks that are holding them back, and confidently make the right marketing decisions for their unique business. In today's episode, we're unpacking ways to use AI as a tool to help you create great content, not to replace your creative spark and unique knowledge, but to assist you in taking that spark and knowledge and more efficiently create valuable insights for others. Joining me today is Kendra Corman, author of Mastering AI in Communications. If you enjoy the show, I hope you'll consider subscribing and leaving a review. Here we go. So starting us out, we already know what we were going to talk about today. And before we hit record, we were actually doing a little riffing back and forth about writing and copy and content. But I just want to kind of set the table and let you kind of start us off here. So we wanted to talk about for trainers, consultants, coaches, people that sell expertise, right? So everybody is talking about AI and has for 2 or 3 years now, particularly with ChatGPT. But about using it, especially to write or create content, right? And there's a lot of people out there in the expertise space who don't consider themselves writers. They don't like writing. The challenge is they want to create content or they want to maybe focus their messaging on their website or whatever it is. But it can't just be scraping from Google, right? It can't just be pulling things together into generic to-do lists or checklists. And I wanted to kind of have you share with us today your ideas about how to actually use these tools in a way that helps people authentically express their experience, their ideas, but maybe help them execute that a little bit more easily. So I'm going to hand the mic to you and let you start us off.
So I love AI, and I know that there's a lot of writers out there who do not like AI or do not like AI writing for you, and they're very passionate about how you sound like a robot and it doesn't know you and your stories and this. Correct. Like it doesn't. It learned off the entire internet. So, but AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So it really doesn't matter if you like it or hate it. It's here to stay. And you definitely need to get familiar with it and familiarize yourself with how you can get it to make you more effective and efficient. I think that's extremely important, right? That's first. That's like setting the ground. It's here to stay. Like I get it. The second piece is really what you're talking about. It doesn't know your stories. It doesn't know your expertise. It doesn't know your philosophy. When it comes to marketing, I love direct mail. Love direct mail all day, every day. Especially for nonprofits. It gets a response. It breaks through. Nonprofits, business to business, love it. But if you go out and ask me what's trending, it's not going to come back with direct mail, right? So it's going to scrape the internet for all of this stuff that may or may not agree with you. And that's why I believe in AI assisted, not AI created content. It can help you with research. Don't get me wrong. I love perplexity.ai is my favorite research tool. You can look things up and stuff. But when you're giving AI direction to write, you need to tell it who it is. You are a marketer with 20 plus years of experience. You've worked for Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, startup, whatever. Your target audience is whatever that happens to be. And you want to write a blog post about, right? Then you give it as much information as possible. And you tell it things like, make sure to include this, do not include that. Here's an example of what I like. It can absorb all of that in record time and come back to you with a draft. It's unbelievable. And so the more information you give it, I came up with a prompting framework, but I call that educating. You have to educate the AI system into what you believe. If I ask AI to do a post about AI for me, it's going to start talking about data and keeping it all and hyper personalization, leveraging, big data and stuff like that, which yes, we can do as small businesses. Majority of my clients, they're not going to do that. And that's not relevant to them. So I have to give it direction of where to go and what to include and what not to include when working on that.
I like that you brought that up, and thank you for framing this so eloquently too, because I know it can go in a lot of different directions, right? When you said that too, one of the things that popped in my head was this kind of first draft mentality, right? And um, I don't know if it's like if, I'm butchering this a bit, but it's like, the first draft is the shit draft, basically, right? And even as a writer, like I still, my first drafts are like that. I mean, they're terrible by design because I don't want to be in editing mode while I'm dumping all this stuff out of my brain or pulling in all this data or research, whatever. But it's actually what you just said made me think of one thing in particular of where it's really useful because if you're not really into making the 10th polished drafts, which is really for me the difference between somebody who likes to write and doesn't, right? It's how many drafts are you willing to do, basically, right? Because each one is incrementally better. And then you get to a like, you know, your margin of benefit is slowly reducing until you're actually just wasting your time. But to your point, if you start out with a good prompt or a series of prompts or whatever it is that's training the AI or giving it some direction, and then you're able to say, okay, here's the raw material, and you're not that worried about whether you're saying it or writing it perfectly eloquently. It could be maybe, I'm sure, in the form of an outline. Hey, I needed to cover these points. This is the meat of what I'm trying to say. Now, create for me a good, clean first draft that then I can go through and finalize or make my own. I mean, am I on the right path with that? Because I think that's how it would probably be most useful to people.
Definitely. The only tip that I would give, pro tip, ask for it to do section by section. So you could give it the whole outline so it knows where it's going to go, but say, okay, start with the introduction. All right, start with the first main point, then the second point, then the third point. It allows you to refine the direction and then put it all together. AI, and I heard this way back in the beginning, is an intern with unlimited hours. I don't know about you if you've been around any like college kids nowadays. I spent some quality time with my niece over her Christmas break, and they do not have an attention span that like will write you a really nice long blog post, right? So if you do that, it loses attention and it starts writing 3 sentence paragraphs. So definitely break it up and give it step by step. And then you can also give it input to refine those steps as you go. And then it'll take that into account as it continues to move forward, which is pretty cool.
That's a great point because if you just I know even having gone through and experimented with ChatGPT and I'll give it kind of a big task, right? And to write something based on a lot of input. Like I'll give you an example. I create audio notes for myself. Like I'll have ideas and I'll just have all these audio notes. And some I've been using like these transcribers and to just kind of take all that and boil it down into some action plans instead of me having to go through all the audio notes. And I'll take like 8 minutes of audio notes and I'll dump it into ChatGPT to make sense of. And I don't even know whether it's doing it, right? Because I don't know what's not there, what is there. But to your point, if you're using it and saying, let's start with the intro, now you can focus on that. It's like, okay, is it going in the right direction? Is it capturing the essence? Um, all these little nuances are missing, I think, from the bigger picture of when people are talking about AI. Because what I just saw and a lot of people saw was you don't have to write anymore. You don't have to think anymore. You can just basically tell it to do stuff, which is just spitting out the most horrendous garbage and it's destroying the Google, basically. It's completely upending Google's entire model. So that's more of a rant than a question, but any thoughts on that?
I agree. Um, AI, do I think it's going to get to a point where it doesn't need as much human supervision as it needs right now? Yes. It's not there. There is nothing in the world of AI that shouldn't have some level of human supervision. right? There's just beyond writing. I mean, there's AI bots that are in chats. There's AI bots that are approving loans for credit unions and banks and things like that. And it's built into everything we're touching now, right? It's not replacing people, right? It's streamlining it so that they don't have to deal with quite as much, because who was getting all their work done to begin with, right? I don't know anybody that can tell me that they get their whole job done in the time that they have. And when you think about it that way, it's here to assist us. It's an intern with unlimited hours. It's not going to do it for you. And if it is doing it for you, then you're not reading it close enough.
I like that. I like that because it's a balanced approach to this whole thing, right? It's just the hype was ridiculous. Like everybody listening saw it, you saw it. It was I saw something actually on a video once of I forgot what it was like a tutorial for some kind of like, you know, freelance writer platform and he's talking about like, I use AI. I can put out 30 blog posts in the time it takes you to put out one. Who's going to win? It's like, not you, dude, because you're putting out 30 garbage, right? So it's just this thing where you just go, stop it. Because one thing I keep saying is the world does not need more content. We don't. Nobody's going, God, I really wish there was stuff to read on the internet. Like there's not a single person doing that. What we're doing for the most part is saying, I wish there was more stuff specific to my situation that I could really sink my teeth into is going to help me solve these problems. And I think that's where people in the expertise space, that's their job. And if the content they're creating reflects that spirit, then you can use all the tools you want. And I think one of the things too, to your point earlier about that human, it's that you said AI assisted. Writing isn't just about having a polished draft. It's not just about the empathy for the reader to be able to that they can absorb your ideas as easily as possible. Writing itself is a process of thinking, right? So if you're skipping past all the drafts and you're not actually thinking through your own point of view, because sometimes the seventh draft isn't just better because it's polished, it's better because you had your own aha moments during that, right? So have you seen ways that you used AI to help you kind of come up with more of those so you're not losing all that magic?
Yes. So I pay for a lot of AI tools. A lot of AI tools. My budget on AI is insane. And I could probably pay off my mortgage if I stopped paying for AI. But I mean it's that addictive right now for me. But I will tell you that yes, so I build projects or custom GPTs. And I will ask the AI system to question me. I will ask it to challenge me. I will ask it to say, hey, you're skeptical. If you don't have enough information, you ask the questions, and I build it out. So I was actually responding to a Google review for a client. And I'd say that that's one of the toughest forms of writing when you sort of need to say, no, you're not right um, on your review. And let me give the
In a
rest of the
way,
world the
in a
perspective.
way that's professional, isn't going to burn a bridge. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like here's the information. And then so it writes the response to the review. And then I said, okay, should I add information that if they were our customer, that this wouldn't have been the case? And here's all the great things. And it's like, no, that doesn't fit your brand values. It's confusing and it's actually a little petty. I'm like, seriously? I considered that a win when I trained an AI system enough to basically say, no, you shouldn't. It's against your brand values. Like it told me no. And the AI system is built to say yes to whatever you want it to, right? That's how they're built. And it's actually like just really cool to have it challenge you. And you can build that so that it does do that.
So I have a
That's
little bit of a challenge to that myself, and I'm curious to see your thoughts or hear your thoughts. So, A, how do we know it's right? Because it's an opinion, right? Is it based on rules? Is it like because there could be something that's like a rules-based response, which I guess isn't really GPT, but it's like, is it based on some kind of set rule base for if it's this situation, then yes, if it's this situation, then no. And how does that relate to our own intuition, right? Because you asked yourself that question, right? And your subconscious was grinding away in milliseconds trying to come up with an answer. That's, I think, where this kind of now we're getting into kind of like the future of creativity, the future of intuition, because everything, and now we're getting into subjective answers, right? Where it's not just what is the capital of Spain? No, there's just
Mhm.
one answer for that. Now it's should I respond this way or that way? It could be either way. And one could argue that there's not one right answer to that.
100%. Um, but again, that's where you come in. It's AI assisted, not AI created. And I was really on the fence about it. I don't know if it could read the me being on the fence through my
Your
words that I
body
was typing
language through
in.
the
Yeah,
camera.
exactly, right. Um, through my typing of the keys, and how hard I was pushing or not. But it was it's like, no, you gave me all this information, and this is, and it told me why it felt that I shouldn't sell the additional products. And I was like, yep, you're right.
See,
I
that's
just
a
didn't
good
want to miss an
point.
opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point. It actually explained it. It gave you, and then
Mm-hmm.
you could buy, you could say, well, that's not a great argument. I'm going to go ahead and do it, right?
Yep.
But it gave you some insight. Now it's like a thinking partner in a way, right? So now it's giving you,
Mhm.
it's reflecting back to you, or it's giving you another way to look at it and you go, oh, that makes sense, or oh, that's not nonsense, or whatever. And you roll the dice.
And don't get me wrong, like I would say about half the time I write back and I'm like, no, what on earth are you thinking? This is not correct.
That's where we have our human agency, right? And that's I think I mean I'm speaking personally. Maybe I'm projecting on the world and how everybody relates to this, but that I did think that for me, it's really the existential fear, not just of your career, but it's also just I love creating, I love thinking, I love problem solving. It would suck to live in a world where you don't have to do that anymore. Just I don't know, like there's only so many hours a day I can fish. So I think just knowing it's like to some degree, whether it's made more efficient or whether it helps us think better because it gives us this feedback that I like to think, or I hope, the human side of me goes that we're always going to have a place to be able to have that creative impact, I guess is one way of saying it.
Well, and at this point in time, I can't say for the future, but at this point in time and in the foreseeable future, AI is not coming with up with new ideas. Nothing it generates is new. Nothing it generates, unless you tell it, reflects your personal experiences, right? It's just trained on a bunch of data, and it's guessing the next word that should be put there based on probabilities, right? In the instructions. And which is unbelievable because it's like so good, but, and it really does save time. But think about the problem solving. Think about how much time a day do you really spend problem solving? Not as much as you would want, because you're stuck doing all of that bottom level stuff, right? Checking the boxes, editing this podcast. How many more podcasts could you create? How many more interviews and how many more insights could you do if you weren't doing all the other pieces that went with it? And you
Yeah.
might be streamlining some of it with AI. I don't know. But how much time could we free up for you to do that? Come up with new ideas and problem solve. That's the power of AI.
I love that point, and it's true. And I'm using AI in a lot of ways, right? One of my favorite uses is with note takers. I love the Fathoms. It's just great. I used to go through if I went through a client strategy call, I always recorded it and I'd go through the video and I'd listen back and I'd write down notes and it was important to me to do it because I didn't want to have to be like furiously writing notes during a client call, but it's really time intensive. And yes, I can always go back through the video still with Fathom, but it does do really good notes. It does give me the option to go through and find detail too. that's a huge time saver. The podcasting stuff, I'm still using Premiere Pro. I personally like doing all my editing manually. Well, it's not manually, but you know, on the computer, I'm not cutting tape or anything like that. But you know, because big part of it is also I'm looking for what for me is the standout points that I want to now have the focus of the micro content. So there's still some parts that I'm choosing to do a little bit less efficiently because the payoff for me in focus is better. But again, that's on the table too. There's going to be a point where I'm not even doing my editing anymore, you know.
Yeah, I don't feel that it does video editing as well as it could. I think that that's where it's going to go next, hopefully. But I don't think it does it as well as we do, because even when it's trying to pick, I use Riverside.fm for a lot of recording and stuff, and it picks out clips and things. Some of the clips I'm like, no. And I'm like, why did
What
we
are you
stop in the middle of
thinking?
that thought?
Well, and
I'm
to your
like,
point about the interns, right? It's like we were talking about when we work with people who expect us to think the way they think or read their minds or whatever, right? We were like, haha, how crazy, right? But it's the same thing for us, right? If we had a human being and they were like, edit this podcast, okay, how do you want, what's important to you? Figure it out. You know, like they're going to come back with what they think is important. Then we're going to like, what are you thinking? Well, it's the same thing, right? It's just like if we don't have a way to say, hey, this is my favorite part, focus on this topic, then it's just going to be like it's just going to throw random stuff based on pauses or whatever, however it's figuring out the end of the clips. So you mentioned before about using these prompts, and you have all these different AI tools that you invest in. And one of the narratives I've seen over the last couple of years is people that are very the first, you know, the first adopters in AI. And, you know, if you're not keeping up with AI, you're going to be left behind, which I thought was always ridiculous because yes, you can learn prompting and you can start using these tools, and that's fantastic. But as we've already seen, and as we will continue to see, there are going to be very job specific AI tools that are going to basically say, oh, are you a salesperson? Here's the thing for this, right? So while it's like almost reminds me of the people that are like hardcore PC users because they like to be able to tinker. And then you have the people like me that like, I don't want to know what's going on. Just give me a Mac and I'm happy. So, you know, it's great when people are really interested to be able to get like underneath the hood and see how can I train my AI? But that's probably not going to be a skill that if you're not learning right now, you're going to be somehow quote left behind.
definitely not. I think prompt engineering is a limited time skill, and I think we're going to be out of it fairly quickly. There's a tool out there, it's called Scrape.io, and it was invented by this, I think, just a woman in Germany. I know because every now and again it defaults to German. Um, anyway, it's just for LinkedIn posting. And if you pay for a certain level of her plan, it will actually read your LinkedIn posts to get your voice for you. And all it does is give you question prompts. And what you do is you like record your answer to the question as if you were talking to a friend. And then it creates hooks for you to pick from and then creates your LinkedIn post. It's all your content.
That's
There's
great.
nothing you have to
That's
do other than,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
But is it built on like something like Chat GPT or Claude.ai? Probably. Could I make one of those tools work just like Scrape.io without having to pay for it too? Yes. Do I really need to take the time to do that? That's where the question comes in. Um, I do think understanding a little bit with the biases and how AI systems work. If you started at least playing around with it, if you don't want to use it for writing, don't use it for writing. Use it to meal plan. Use it to plan a vacation. Use it to write a handwritten note inside a sympathy card, you know, whatever it is that you want to do with it, because then you can start to see how it works, right? I always want to say how it thinks, but it's not thinking. And that's the key to remember. But yeah, so I believe that you're not necessarily going to be that far behind, but I do feel the more that you understand going into it, the better you're going to be able to work around any biases and things that are built into it.
And it's also just the whether you have to use a lot of prompts right now or not, just the starting to use tools as they come out because it's like anything else. If you've waited till now to get an iPhone or a Android, you're probably going to be very uncomfortable catching up. So it's more about just dipping your toe in the water, even if something does not require prompts. Like if you use, Fathom or if you use Riverside, which is, I think, one of the most popular ones for podcasting, right? So just get comfortable with what it can do because some of the stuff is really cool. Some of it is very clunky and you just go like use silly AI, right? I'll give you an example what I just used it recently for, which is so not that creative, but like I just bought this new house or a house that's been around for 25 years, right? And I haven't owned a home in a while. So I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna have to start maintaining this thing, right? And it's winter here in Ohio, so it's like you got to worry about all that. So I went on ChatGPT and it was like, nothing groundbreaking, but I was just like, hey, I just moved into this house that was built in 2000, I haven't owned a home in a while. Like I was just talking to like, what do I need to do to maintain this? Like, well, give me a maintenance schedule. It just spit out some stuff that should watch. Oh, cool. That saved me from having to look at a bunch of blog posts. And you could do it through the web too, so you can have that web component. So little stuff like that. I'm not on the cutting edge of AI or ChatGPT by doing that way, but it saved me some time. I wasn't sweating it whether it was the most comprehensive list, but it got me started, right? So think about all the millions of different ways that you can use ChatGPT or any other tool just to basically figure out solutions to problems or research. I mean, there's a million little ways to use it that never have to involve it writing your website for you.
100%. Again, I was just using Perplexity this morning because I was like, why isn't it giving me my right click resize image that I used to have? Because I just got a new computer and I was like, how do I resize an image in Windows 11? And it's like, here's the four steps. It summarized it all for me, gave me the reference. It's like, you can use the Photos app or you can use, because I'm PC girl over here. But it gave me the or paint and it like gave me the instructions on how, because I didn't want to go into Photoshop and resize. I just wanted to make it smaller. Just make it smaller because it has to be 100 um kilobytes or smaller. And it was 196. So I just had to take it down in size. And it's like, can't you just make it smaller? And Perplexity gave me step by step how to do it. It was like 3 or 4 really quick steps. I skimmed it and I did it. Saved me a ton of time rather than Googling how to do this, finding the right thing. And if it's a YouTube video, going to, YouTube video and listening to them talk about everything else that they were going to talk about on top of it, until it got me the information that I needed. So it's a really good time saving tool and it doesn't need to do all of your writing. But if you're struggling with writing, it is an amazing partner, especially for that ugly first draft.
That ugly, ugly first draft that's so important and so unavoidable. Well, last thing I was going to mention, since you just talked about the Google search, and this is for people in this space or really every type of business, but particularly for trainers, consultants, and coaches who are creating content with the intention of using that content, as we all do, to try to generate leads and build our audiences and all that. And this is the other flip side of all this is that it's a lot of it's being bypassed, right? So somebody that might search for how do I improve the culture of my, whatever company is not necessarily finding your YouTube video anymore because they're getting a summary through Google, which I think is Gemini. Is that correct?
Yeah, Google is Gemini, and it's the AI assisted search results, the AI search results now.
Yeah. So you're seeing a summary, much like you might see from ChatGPT, right? And you're getting summarized version of that, which now is the flip side of this, issue. And when you're a content creator on any side and you're trying to create content to build an audience and to engage potential clients, to be aware of how that's affecting it, even if you never use it to write. But if you're creating video, if you're creating blog posts, writing articles, knowing that how people find those is fundamentally changed now. As we start to wind down, are there any thoughts you can share on how people might adapt to that?
You got to be true to yourself. You've got to offer unique insights, right? Because I can Google, building a company culture, and it's going to give me generic stuff. But if you give me examples and you give me stories and lessons learned, that is stuff I'm going to pay attention to. That's what I'm truly looking for. And giving that value, having a podcast, having, a blog, you don't need it to reach everybody, right? You just need it to reach the right people. And if you're talking about the right things and you are doing that on a consistent basis, you can define consistent. Um, as long as you're doing that and adding that value, the people will be there.